Hi, so welcome to my first ever drawing video. It's a time lapse, but not a super fast time lapse. It's full 15 odd minutes of me basically going to be providing commentary over this thing. So let's just get stuck into it. Now, this thing originally took me about an hour to do. It was a commission, so it's a sketch cover, as you can see, and I'm just covering up the rest of the comic book because I don't want to get mucky. Just to give you an idea of what I'm showing here. So in the video I'm going to be showing odds and sods. I just showed my tablet and my reference drawing, and just highlighting here that I'm drawing this to a basic sort of sketch card size, so it's 2.5 by 3.5 inches. I start by marking everything up, measuring, and trying to get the thing center in the middle of this thing. This isn't the actual sketch cover, so the actual sketch cover is of Boba Fett playing a clarinet. Clarinet? Yeah, he's playing a clarinet. So it's a commission back in April. I think I got the commission in April, and I made the drawing, or the delivery was for May. But I like to do little surprises for people on the back, so I'll then draw something else on the reverse. Usually not quite as involved, but involved enough, to the point where I'm probably making some kind of loss, yeah, like financially. But anyway, so I'm showing off my Faber-Castell pencils and all my gear. Not that this is a ad for Faber-Castell, but that just happens to be what I'm using at the moment, and I'm enjoying them. So I really like them. But if you'd asked me 20 years ago what I was using, God knows, I can't remember now. But it'll be something else, probably. But so I've got my reference image, and what I do just to try and speed the process up, especially with these trading cards, less so normal drawings and whatnot, but certainly the trading cards, because you're working to such tight deadlines and whatnot. I kind of I hate to call it a cheat, but it's not a cheat in the sense that I'm using a light box or like I'm not tracing anything, and I don't really like grids. Light boxes are pointless. Don't do that. You're not gonna improve your hand-to-eye coordination. You're not gonna improve your observational skills. You're just not gonna get any better. You're just gonna, you're just copying stuff. What's the point? But what I do as part of my new process, rather than just drawing straight out from scratch, so just looking at the reference image and then trying to lay that down, translate it, I work out the composition first electronically in InDesign. So I created a little template that has loads of 2.5 inch by 3.5 inch squares, like almost like a grid, so I can pull my reference picture in there and sort of scale it up and down and see what I want to do with it. So it saves a bit of time. This is purely the only reason I do this is to save some time. I avoid drawing thumbnails, although ironically, but in direct contradiction to that, the actual cover of this comic book, I did do a thumbnail. I didn't do it electronically like this. I drew a thumbnail. I had my reference photo, just saved normally, not in a grid or anything, because it doesn't fit these dimensions of a sketch card or anything like that, or so it was just I did just sort of draw from the screen down to onto the paper. But with this thing, it does help. I do find it helps, and it's purely an efficiency sort of thing, So anyway, you'll see me using my erasers a lot, not my rubbers. We don't use that term anymore. It's not 1986 anymore, because I can be quite messy. So even though the final product may not look it, that's probably because I'm extensively erasing all the fluffy bits. What do we used to call it when we were little? I used to get asked, "Why are your lines so hairy?" Like, well, I don't know. It's just how it is. I keep going back and forth over it. It's it's kind of messy and whatnot, but I like that sort of organic process. So, but what I do instead, in terms of like when it comes down to getting proportions correct, because if I do just draw straight from the sheet down on from the reference photo on my tablet down to onto the page. I don't know, there's a risk of things being a bit too maybe lopsided, wobbly, proportions not being quite right. So I this is usually the lengthiest time in the process for me, is laying down that initial drawing and making sure that all the proportions are right. So you've got to spend a lot of time getting that right. Get if this was a painting, for example, this would be your underdrawing, so make sure you've got to have that right. Your foundation, your skeleton, your it's got to be right. The foundation's got to be right, and then you can build on top of that. So here I'm sort of just measuring off of this thing, using my eye. It's actually a reasonably easy image to do this one, because it fills up the whole space, and it's a fairly symmetrical looking helmet, so it's reasonably easy. Things in helmets and things like that, those kinds of images tend to be a little bit easier, or at least I find them a little easier than, say, if I'm trying to get a likeness down, of a human character. That can be very, very time consuming, but rewarding, especially if you get it right. And if you don't get it right, which happens sometimes, well, okay, whatever, learn from it and move on. So the way I work with these things is I start with the harder pencils. So I usually start with either like a 5 or a 6H. I tend to use the 6H now for blending, getting some nice blends in there. I've got this sort of really steep little wedge developed on it, but and then you just sort of build. Then I'll just build up to softer and softer pencils. Now it's worth noting that the material, this stock that these sketch covers come in, if you use too hard a pencil and you press too hard on it, it leaves indentations. Now, in my work, I actually quite like the indentations, because then I build those up with cross-hatching and whatnot, and then go over those with softer pencils, all the way up to, I think the softest I've got is a 6B, and you get these cool little marks and scratchy effects and stuff. And I use that when I've drawn, for example, things like Palpatine or the Knights of Ren on sketch cards, because it kind of fits, it fits it thematically, and I quite like that look. But you may not always want it, and I certainly didn't want this thing, I don't think, to look too scratchy. So I am using a harder pen there, a lighter pencil, sorry. I think that might be an F or an H, but I started off earlier with an HB, the one which had the eraser. Oh no, this is the eraser, yeah. So that's the standard thing that came with my little pencil extender. And I don't usually use HBs, actually. I usually, like I said, I go from the quite hard 5, 4, 5, 6H. Then I jump up to an F, a firm, or an H perhaps, and then I'll start moving straight into like the 3Bs, the 4Bs. But it is a gradual process of building this thing up. Is it entirely necessary? Maybe not. You could probably build in some more efficiencies there by just using the darks for the darks and the lights for the lights and whatnot. But like I said, part of this process for me is to build up these layers, make it look like they're, well, just to show that a lot of work has gone into something, not make it look like it has, but actually do it. So I build these things up with layers upon layers upon layers, and it's usually worked out okay for me. So we're starting to get in a little bit darker here with an HB, which I guess works fine here on this stock, because I think it comes up a little bit darker on this stock, interestingly enough. Whereas if I was using sort of regular cartridge or whatever, or a Bristol board or something, no, on Bristol it comes up, because this is very similar to Bristol, actually, maybe a little bit more porous. But you do, sometimes, depending on the surface, certain pencils will appear lighter, so certain pencils will appear darker. So the lights appear really light on this thing. So you want to kind of avoid using something that's too hard, because you risk sort of hacking the paper up and whatnot. Hence probably why I'm sticking with this HB here, and then I'll probably move on to the really darks later. But everything is sort of used, I use my rulers, I'm literally measuring stuff out, so a distance between the edge of the visor to the edge of the paper, and same thing on the, in the reference and whatnot. And that's particularly important when I'm doing human characters. Really important. Same principles apply for these helmets, but like I said, this kind of thing is a little less time consuming than when you're drawing an actual, human face. So yeah, and the other thing I tend to do in terms of my process, not technique, not my process, my style, I suppose, is finding unusual things in the helmets or whatever it is, the face, whatever. So they may not always be there. So for example, here I'm drawing these sort of scratchy, streaky things, and they're not actually necessarily reflections that are in that reference photo, but they as long as it works in terms of the light source, I think it's fine to add these sort of this visual interest. I guess that's the only way I can describe it. But you can see that I like to take liberties. I've taken quite a few liberties here. So I've got the actual bullet dent thing, whatever it is, in his helmet. That's on the left-hand side of Boba's helmet. So we've got that. We've kept that in. But I'm doing all this other weirdness that may not actually be there. But which is fine, because it just makes it a bit more interesting. So even like on the screen, if I've got glare on my tablet or or the computer or whatever it is that I'm using, but I tend to use a tablet because it's neat and tidy. You can see hardly any muck, hardly any mess. I like to keep things as tidy as possible, and as clean as possible. My workstation. I'm not one of these people who believes in you have to get paint all over yourself or whatever. Like even when I was doing my bachelor's, I remember we had a visiting artist. He was a printmaker, and I was doing he was a photographer and a printmaker. Anyway, and he caught me in the printmaking studio, and I was doing what was I working on? Not lino cuts. I think I was anyway, whatever, I can't remember now. But I just remember working away, but I was in my sort of not Sunday best, but I was in my good clothes. I didn't have aprons, I didn't have mucky shoes, and I didn't have paint all over me or anything. And he was intrigued. He said he'd never seen that before, so I was flattered. Good. And then he watched me work, and he was surprised. He was surprised that I was tidy, and that's just, I don't know, that's just something that's ingrained in me. It always has been. Our home is tidy, our appearance is usually tidy, my work station is tidy. Tidy home, tidy mind, or whatever it is that they say, whoever they are. But anyway, so a lot of erasing, a lot of cleaning up, a lot of tidying up here on the drawing itself, not the physical space. But just slowly building it all up. And taking, as I was saying earlier, liberties. So, for example, and this is a slight spoiler for anybody who hasn't seen The Mandalorian Season 2 yet, isn't up to date with it yet, but, in this drawing here, you can see that I've kind of drawn his cape going all the way across, rather than just that sort of off-the-shoulder poncho thing. It's kind of going all the way across, which is a little bit more like Boba in his current state, I suppose, where when he slams all that armor on over his robe. Not quite, obviously, but so there's a bit of I've taken some liberty there, and again, I think that's fine. It's really the only time you shouldn't really take liberties is with when you're dealing with likenesses. You want Harrison Ford to look like Harrison Ford, not like a melty Harrison Ford that I drew who looked like he was made out of ice cream. And that's on an official Topps card. I hope that didn't go into packs. There was, and then there was this Adam Driver, which no matter, I started getting it wrong and I kept reworking it. And the more I reworked it and rubbed it out, the worse it got, until at the end it just did not look anything like him. And admittedly, I think that was my second card, I think. And the weird thing is that I'm kind of used to drawing Adam Driver. So I could probably like smash out a little caricature thing without any reference and get it to look like him. Like people will be able to say, "Oh yeah, that's meant to be Adam Driver, right?" Because you become familiar with something, once you've drawn it so many times. But yeah, I don't know what happened with that sketch card. I hope that didn't make it into packs either. I hope that got binned. But anyway, if it is out there and you're listening to me ramble on about this, and you own that Adam Driver card, well, first of all, sorry. I can only apologize. secondly, I hope you like it. Anyway, so here we go. I'm just tidying this thing up now. I think we're coming to the end of it, so I'm just drawing in the borders. Sometimes I might draw in the borders a little quickly, a little early, to give the illusion of having moved on a lot quicker than, or being further ahead in the process than I actually am. But you can see also I don't really protect here in this case, because it's such a small drawing. I don't need to really protect the space too much with sheets of paper and things like that. I am doing it a little bit here. If this is a larger drawing, yes, I would stop my hand from potentially smudging any of the graphite that's gone down. I haven't gone too soft here by the looks of things in terms of the graphite, so there's probably less of a need. But sometimes, especially when you're laying down those 4s, 5s, 6Bs, those really soft pencils, then you do need to make sure that you're protecting it. But obviously, don't you cover up with a sheet of paper or whatever, so that you can rest your hand. Don't then start rubbing on that, right? Because the graphite's still going to move, so you still need to be careful a little bit. I love my putty rubbers because you can really sharpen them into a point. And what I tend to do is I'll use a putty rubber to pick up all the excess rubbings from the regular eraser. But yeah, so there's the finished drawing, and that's really it. That can that you saw. You're probably familiar, but that was spray fix. You get different types of fixative for different mediums, so make sure you get the right stuff. So that's my first ever drawing video, time lapse, down from an hour to 15 minutes. I hope you enjoyed it. Until the next one, bye bye.